Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating intersection. We're going to look at how an urgent, high-stakes modern military crisis is actually being solved using ancient practices of spiritual resilience. Basically, we're tracking the sacred pause all the way from ancient text straight onto a modern Air Force base.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the resilience crisis. Second, the ancient roots of retreats. Third, East versus West meditation styles. And finally, building modern spiritual fitness.
Section 1, the spiritual resilience crisis.
45. That's the staggering number of days an airman at Eglin Air Force Base has to wait just to get a single mental health appointment. I mean, imagine being in an acute crisis and being told you have to wait a month and a half for help. It's an absolute eternity, right? And it points to a profound system overload.
You see, Eglin isn't exactly your average base. Its primary mission is testing munitions, which is incredibly high-stress, high-stakes work. But structurally, it's fragmented into 9 different wings, meaning there's pretty much zero hometown community feel. Add in 45-minute commutes just to get around the massive test ranges, and you've got this intense daily disconnection. Tragically, this isolation culminated in 9 suicides in a single year. The military pushes physical and mental toughness for sure, but their spiritual resilience pillar, it had completely crumbled.
Now, when the military talks about spiritual fitness, they're definitely not talking about mandatory church attendance. Officially, it's defined as the ability to adhere to the core beliefs and values needed to persevere through a mission. Think of it like your internal compass. It's that foundational pillar of meaning and purpose that goes way beyond just doing push-ups or passing a basic psych eval.
And when that spiritual fitness is completely missing, well, personnel become highly vulnerable to an invisible wound of war known as moral injury. This happens when you engage in or even just witness an act that totally shatters your own sincerely held moral beliefs. Without a strong spiritual foundation to stand on, bouncing back from that kind of soul-deep fracture is almost impossible. Moving on to Section 2, Ancient Roots of Retreats.
So how in the world have humans historically survived this kind of psychological breaking point? Well, long before modern therapy existed, the retreat was our primary survival tool. From the ancient concept of a Sabbath rest down through historical figures like Jacob, Moses, and Elijah, we see this recurring human survival pattern, withdrawing from the chaos to find some clarity. Take the Sabbath, for example. It was essentially humanity's very first structured retreat, designed as a sacred pause. And today, we desperately need this to resist what we can call the culture of now. You know the one, that endless, exhausting cycle of smartphone pings, extreme productivity, and just restless consumerism. Hitting pause is really step 1 in restoring our spiritual pillar.
But here's the thing you gotta notice. These ancient pauses, they were absolutely not relaxing spa days. They were real struggles. Jacob, paralyzed with anxiety, retreats into solitude at night, wrestles with the divine, and is literally transformed. Moses, isolated out there as a shepherd, gets this multisensory shock through a burning bush. And Elijah? He's suffering from what we would absolutely diagnose today as severe burnout or combat exhaustion. He flees to the wilderness just to survive. Silence, solitude, and deep struggle are the ancient prerequisites for true transformation.
Section 3, East versus West meditation.
Zooming out globally for a second, research out of the University of Oslo reveals something kind of fascinating. History actually divides meditation into 2 distinct mechanical approaches. You have the Western tradition, which is entirely content-based, and the Eastern tradition, which is highly technique-based. Both build that sacred space we've been talking about, but they use totally different blueprints to get there. Let's look at the Western approach first, spanning Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. This one is all about content. It heavily emphasizes a personal relationship with God. So you recite specific prayers or you visualize a detailed story from Scripture. Because it's so incredibly focused on this relational dialogue, the Western tradition has historically been pretty suspicious of meditation that relies only on physical techniques rather than divine connection.
Now contrast that with the Eastern approach, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism. Over here, technique is king. Practitioners might chant sounds without inherent meaning, visualize abstract geometry, or focus intensely on breathing and movement, like in yoga. The overall goal is integration with a greater whole. And ironically, it's this technique-based style, often stripped completely of its original religious roots, that has absolutely taken over the Western world's wellness industry since the 1960s.
And finally,
Section 4. Building Modern Spiritual Fitness.
So how exactly do you take these ancient tools and deploy them to save modern lives? Well, faced with the crisis at Eglin, an Air Force chaplain synthesized these exact historical concepts into a radical 2-day experiential retreat in Florida. This wasn't some sterile mental health clinic. It was a proactive, immersive environment designed to rapidly rebuild that collapsed spiritual pillar. Think about the irony and the brilliance of that. A base designed to test lethal munitions is prescribing ancient monastic silence to save its troops.
And this brilliantly illustrates how you actually operationalize that ancient wisdom. The curriculum started off gently with a Sabbath dinner and some nightly reflection. But by session 3, they hit the hardest part, an extended practice of pure silence and solitude, directly mimicking those ancient, uncomfortable wilderness encounters we talked about. They followed this up with intense goal setting, learning how to actually take this sacred pause back into their high-stress daily lives.
And, well, the data shows it really worked. Measured on the Special Operations Command's Spiritual Fitness Scale, airmen were tracked before the retreat, immediately after, and then 30 days post-retreat. The results show a clear, measurable positive shift. By simply stepping out of the chaos and practicing historic solitude, these airmen reported sustained increases in their sense of purpose and meaning, actively improving their ability to survive their military missions.
We might not all be testing munitions or waiting 45 days for military health care, but every single one of us is battling our own relentless culture of now. So, I'll leave you with this. How might you integrate a sacred pause into your own chaotic life? The ancient blueprint for spiritual fitness is sitting right there. It's just waiting for you to use it.